What happens when we die? Or better yet, who put the cushion there? What happens when we die? It sounds like a sincere question, a spiritual question, a philosophical question. But listen closely, and something strange is hiding inside it. Because buried inside that question is an unexamined belief. The question assumes two things before the conversation even begins. First, that we truly lived in the way we think we did. Second, that something called death is real enough to explain. The question is already standing on a conclusion it never bothered to investigate. But there is another curious detail hiding in plain sight. The question is almost never asked this way. What happens when I die? Instead, it is usually asked this way. What happens when we die? That small shift matters more than it seems, because the word "we" quietly softens the idea of death. It cushions it. If everyone dies, then death must be normal. If death is normal, then it must belong to reality. And if it belongs to reality, then surely it must belong to the world God created. But pause for a moment. What would God know about death? Love does not create what it must later destroy. Love does not manufacture life only to withdraw it later. Love extends. Love preserves. Love gives without taking back. So if death were truly part of reality, two possibilities would follow. Either God creates what does not last, or there exists something outside of God's nature. Both possibilities quietly place existence beyond the reach of eternal love. And that makes a mockery of love itself. Because love that ends is not love. It is merely an arrangement with an expiration date. But return again to the structure of the question. What happens when we die? Notice what it never asks. It never asks whether death itself is real. It simply assumes it is. That is the unexamined belief hidden at the center of the conversation. The mind assumes the premise, and then spends centuries debating the conclusion. But there is another assumption hiding behind the first one. The belief that the body is the life. Once that belief slips in, the rest of the story writes itself. Bodies are born, bodies age, bodies stop functioning. So the mind concludes that life itself must follow the same arc. Birth, life, death. But everything about the body is constantly changing. Cells replace themselves. Personalities evolve. Roles appear and disappear. Even memories rearrange themselves over time. Everything about the person is in motion. So if life is defined by what constantly changes, then the life we think we are describing is unstable from the beginning. Which leads to a far more unsettling question. Before asking what happens when we die, who said we live the way we think we did? The awareness that witnesses experience does not appear to age. It does not wrinkle. It does not accumulate gray hair. It simply observes the story unfolding. It was present in childhood. It was present in youth. It is present now. The scenes change, but the witness remains. So perhaps the real mystery is not what happens after death. Perhaps the mystery is why we became so certain that the body was ever the life at all. And that is where the strange comfort of that word, "we," reveals its quiet purpose. It cushions the belief. If everyone dies, then no one has to question the premise. If the entire crowd walks toward the same cliff, no one feels alone. But the moment someone stops and looks down, the cushion disappears, and another question emerges. If what is real cannot die, who told us that we were the ones who could?